Good morning. My name is Rabbi Chaim Belyak. I'm pleased to welcome you to the 49th presentation of our series known as Freighted Legacies. This series has brought us notable historians, opportunities to share music, and to understand the bridge between Jewish culture, Polish culture. We've been hosted by Dominika Zakrzewska and our interpreters Marek Jozowski and Marżena Szymanska. We're pleased today that we have such distinguished guests um, to share with us this freighted legacy. I want to welcome back Dr. Joshua Zimmerman from Yeshiva University. I'm going to be brief in the uh, details of his biography and his CV because we've shared that with you on our website. We've made sure also to highlight, for the purposes of this conversation, one chapter in his book, Jozef Pilsudski, Leader of Modern Poland, the George Washington, we might say, of Poland. We're welcoming today a new guest, um, a scholar, a Polish scholar focusing on Jewish history, uh, Jolanta Jindul, um, who we're very pleased is with us for the first time. And I've been hearing about her work. Unfortunately, my Polish does not allow me to read it directly, and I actually, as a rabbi, take the privilege of saying we would love to see more of your work in English, and we look forward to your response. So the format for today will be three parts. I'm going to conclude welcoming our two scholars. Uh, uh, Joshua Zimmerman will speak for about 25 minutes. There'll be a response from Professor Jundol, um, and then the audience will be invited to share questions in the question format or in the chat. And I'm very pleased that we have this opportunity. We're going to be focusing on the period of Pilsudski's biography shortly before World War One, which was basically the topic of our first lecture with Dr. Zimmerman. But we'll be also focusing on World War One itself and the aftermath. We're very pleased to welcome you back, Joshua, and please take the floor.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my PowerPoint. Let me just grab that, please. Make sure it's up and running. Here we go. And I will share that now. So first, just let me thank Rabbi Belyak and Freighted Legacies and the whole team around it. As was just stated, this is the 49th episode, and it's all archived and really has become a great important resource for those in Polish-Jewish relations, Polish-Jewish studies. And I'm also very thankful to have Dr. Jolanta Jindul here, who I've known for over 2 decades and is really the premier specialist on this subject of Pilsudski and the Jews, among other topics that she's written about. And her book from 2021, Żydzi i Pilsudski, Jews and Pilsudski, actually is a documentary history. It's a selection of sources on this subject of Pilsudski and the Jews. So it's a real pleasure to have her here. I'm going to speak for 25 minutes and try not to go over that. Well, we spoke last time about Pilsudski's upbringing, and I just want to say something to remind readers that Pilsudski was born in Imperial Russia in 1867. I'm going to show you exactly where in Imperial Russia, uh, right outside of Vilna in a small in a village. Then at age 7, his family moved to the city of Vilna, and that's where he was raised until he graduated high school and went on to his first year of college. He was raised in a very patriotic home in which both his father and his other members, including his grandmother, his mother, uncles, cousins, were directly involved in the 1863 armed uprising. And so he ends up being raised in this household in which the idea of the resurrection and restoration of Poland is very central. And his mother, in particular, hopes that one day her son or sons will play a central role in that. Unfortunately, she passed away long before World War I or 1918 when that dream is realized. And Pilsudski stands as first head of state and commander in chief, as Rabbi Beliak said, the George Washington of Poland. I'd mentioned that in the high school, he joined an illegal Polish study group that was called the Russian State Gymnasium. And there is when I show that he first encountered the subject of the Jews in Polish history, because I tracked and was able to find out which reading materials they were presenting in the study group, and some of them were on the 1863 uprising, which was he was directly connected to because of his family. And there is where in that 2-volume history of the Polish uprising of 1863 that had been written in 1882 and now it's 1885, it was smuggled in from Austrian Galicia, that I went through that work and found out that there is a discussion of Jews who fell during the 1863 uprising. And I surmise that that's his first time where he starts engaging in this idea that the Jews of Poland are also among the elements of patriotic Poles, and you cannot stereotype them. In addition, I mentioned that at the end of his life, he was interviewed in 1931 when he was 63 years old. He lived for another 3.5 years. And he makes a statement that I was always different from others. I always despised stereotypes. I always knew that they were at best quarter truths and not to really be believed. So there's also a character trait we can trace back to his suspicion about prejudice against groups, especially since if we go back for a moment, in Vilna of his upbringing, it was a multicultural, multilingual, multi-ethnic neighbor city in which no one group formed a majority. Jews made up 40% of the city, Poles made up 31, and then down. So it's a classic kind of multicultural, multi-ethnic regional capital, and that impacted him about what he believed was kind of the norm, which is diversity, and that was something positive, I think, that he believed. Then I showed how after his first year of college, he got implicated in a plot to assassinate Tsar Alexander III, even though he had no direct involvement or no direct knowledge. And he was sent for 5 years Siberian exile to this area right here, is 4,100 miles away, between ages 19 and 24. Part of his bitterness is not only that he was blocked from a university education in that critical part of his youth, but when he signed his release in 1892, 5 years later, there was a statement there that once he returns to Vilna, he is not allowed to study at universities for another 5 years, so between 24 and 29. And so there was, for him, no other option other than to go underground. So he joins this radical Polish Socialist Party, and he becomes leader of that party. In Siberian exile, I do believe that this was an important contact, and that is that he met Stanisław Landi, who had been there for 13 years as a Polish socialist, but also of Jewish background, whose uncle, Michał Landi, had actually perished in an 1861 patriotic demonstration in Warsaw. And once again, I think it reinforced this idea for Pilsudski that there are Jews in Poland who are willing to put their lives on the line for Poland, and that this in a way made him think of Jews differently than a lot of people around him. This is Pilsudski in 1896 at age 28 as leader of the Polish Socialist Party. I'm going through this quickly because I know it's not exactly. And he edited and founded their newspaper, Robotnik, an illegal press inside Imperial Russia, right under the nose of the Tsarist secret police. And there he often penned editorials about Jews. This is one, as you can see here, Kwestii Żydowskiej, in which he condemns anti-Semitism. And essentially, as I write, excerpt that editorial there, where he just says anti-Semitism is really just a foe of democracy. And if you want the development of the democratic ideal and institutions in Poland, you have to, by definition, be a foe and enemy of anti-Semitism. It cannot be embraced, and there's no compromise in that. So he seemed to have a very clear position on this subject. And the other thing is it helped that some of his comrades were actually Jewish in the Polish Socialist Party. Felix Perl, Stan Mendelsohn, for example, who were among the founding members. Those who helped found the Jewish section of his party, Maximilian Halperin and Felix Sachs. And then also Max Horowitz, who edited the Yiddish organ of the Polish Socialist Party. And so he seemed to not ask the Jews to assimilate to Poland, but just to embrace that ideal that in Polish lands, you should be supporting the Polish drive for independence, and not just for the sake of sovereignty, but that there would be you'd carve out a space in the western rim of Imperial Russia, and you'd have a democratic constitutional country in which Jews would live in security and in freedom. And so it was actually in the interest of the Jews. And then he shifted from an insurrectionist to around 1905, decided that insurrection would never bring about the expulsion of Russian troops and Russian state forces from Polish lands. So in fact, really the only way was through military. And so he really shifted from 1905 to 1914 into this military path. And here we see him as leading an officer training school in his Riflemen's Association in Zakopane, August 1913. Now, the thing Pilsudski is known perhaps most for, or one of the reasons he's known most for among Polish Jews, is during World War I, when he formed the 3rd Brigade of the Polish Legions. And I wanted to put a map here of Poland during World War I, and this is just to show that Pilsudski by that time was living in Krakow, and he helped form the legions in Austrian Galicia, which were supported by the General Austrian Forces, because of course they shared the same goal once World War I started, which is the expulsion of Russians from these lands here, the Polish lands. So under the auspices of the Austro-Hungarian army, he was able to lead these legions. Now, one of the legends of that time is that he seemed to have a kind of fanatical following of Polish Jewry, because he had this reputation of not only being honest, having Jewish comrades in his party, but have never really compromising on his idea that not only should there be a Polish state, but it should be democratic and free for all without regard to religion, and especially for minority rights. And because he never really wavered from that ideologically, he had a lot of support during World War I from Polish Jews. And so this is, before we go to that next map, we have during World War these cases where approximately we believe, and I would say until around 2010, 2011, it was believed that about 10% of the Polish legions in Austrian Galicia were Jewish. I believe that now with new works that have come out, that's been scaled down to possibly more like 4%. But the numbers are something like this. We believe that there were approximately 7,000, excuse me, fighters in the Polish legions between 1914 and 1916, 1917. And we believe that according to a recent archival study by a Polish scholar, that there were probably about 648 or 650 Jewish fighters in that. And some of them are kind of legendary, and because they've actually emerged in Polish Jewish collective memory due to artistic works, and in the interwar period, this feeling of the need to kind of prove that Jews were patriotic by documenting these Polish Jewish soldiers. So this is an example of Pilsudski as leading, I'm sorry, the 1st Brigade. I said the 3rd Brigade, excuse me, the 1st Brigade. And in December 1914, I put this photograph up because at this time, a journalist from Krakow wrote about Pilsudski as being kind of the image now of Poland. He's emerged as kind of the major leader of Poland, outside of the borders of Poland and inside. That there's really no other leader that has risen to his stature. Now, as many of you may know, by August 1915, the Austrian and German forces were successful against the Russians, and this whole area that used to be part of Russia was now liberated by the Austrians, who took this area, and then the Germans. And it opened up a whole new region of Polish Jews. And Pilsudski, by 1916, had moved from Krakow to Warsaw and was now heading military units in this area. And so there was an expansion of the Polish legions. And also it meant that there were Jews from the largest Jewish center in Europe who could now join the legions. Now, some of the legionnaires who fell in battle became subjects of study in the interwar period, and one of them was Bronisław Monspearl, a Jewish officer in Pilsudski's 1st Brigade who perished on the battlefield in 1915. Now, the Polish Jewish artist, the famous artist Arthur Szyk, in 1926, 1928, did a series of 44 paintings in Paris called the Statute of College, basically chronicling Jewish struggle for Poland and Polish rights and sovereignty in history. And I wanted to show you that one of those 44 paintings was called The Death of Bronisław Monspearl. And it was a very dramatic painting, as something that to this day is used as kind of reflection of the Jewish sacrifice during World War I. I wanted to give you this sense that the cover of the book that came to be bound of the 44 paintings by Arthur Szyk, the Polish Jewish artist, he ended up dedicating to Pilsudski. Right here, this is the cover page to Pilsudski. Because there was, as I said, this kind of fanatical loyalty to a figure that they believed was good, honest, and well-meaning towards kind of all inhabitants of Poland, and the Jews in particular. Now, I wanted to show you a couple things about the legions, and that is this example where in 1915. Someone named Jacob Schatzky, who later became a famous historian of Jews in Poland and Jews in Warsaw, who ended up going to the United States in the 1930s. and helping to reconstitute YIVO in World War II. As a young 24-year-old, he actually issued in Polish this appeal for Jews to join the legions. And in my book, I translate all of this, and I think it's important to mention that he puts this struggle in the context of the history of Poland and Polish Jews, basically going back to the 18th century when Poland was partitioned and wiped off the map of Europe. And there was this very, very famous uprising by Thaddeus Kościuszko, the American Polish general, in which he actually formed a Jewish battalion under someone named Barak Yoselevich. And I mention this only because if you look at the text, he refers to Jewish recruits to the Polish legions as serving in the spirit of Barak Yoselevich. You can see right here. And he mentions that Pilsudski is kind of the continuation of the figure of Kościuszko, who wanted to preserve Polish sovereignty, but also bring to Poland some kind of American style aspects of democracy. Here's a rather famous photograph of Jews in the Polish legions, in which it includes one of them, which is Leopold Gottlieb. And I just want to mention that Leopold, I believe one of them is Leopold Gottlieb, and he was during World War I. He was an artist, and Pilsudski appointed him as the official illustrator of the Polish legions. So Leon Gottlieb did perhaps the most known paintings, drawings of Pilsudski and the legions during World War I. He survived the war as a legionnaire, and then became a very important painter. This is a classic photograph of two generations of Jewish fighters for Poland. The gentleman on the left is a veteran, Jozef Hertz, a veteran of the 1863 Polish uprising, and the gentleman on the right, his son, is a fighter in the Polish legions in 1916, Warsaw 1916. So this is their a kind of source of pride in uniform for fighting for Poland, which would become a battle of memory in the not too distant future after Pilsudski's death, when there was a rightward swing in the Polish government, and there was an attempt to say that Jews are largely Bolshevik supporters and unpatriotic, and they were doing this revision of history. You can see here how Pilsudski was venerated. Here he's visiting an art exhibit in Krakow in 1916, but you just see the veneration he has as head of that first brigade. Now we're going to move towards the next part. This was just to show that United States at this time supported the independence of Poland. So it was a major diplomatic coup d'etat in World War I for the Poles, that the American president, before any other leader came out and said Polish independence must be one of the outcomes of World War I. And this is Pilsudski right before his arrest. Now I want to look at this period 1918 to 1922, and this is the period of the reconstitution of Poland as a state in 1918, and then the settlement, what we'll call the settlement of the frontiers, up until 1921, and until a president is actually elected by the parliament, and Pilsudski exits as head of state. This map is from my book. It's important for readers to understand that when Poland declared statehood on November 18th, 1918, this was the area administered by that Polish entity. By March 1921, the international boundary between Poland and Bolshevik Russia was recognized here, and between Poland and Germany, and you'll see how much land it gained in this series of border wars. And I document here there were basically six border wars. But for the Jews, this was both, of course, a time where they were given full equality in rights, and a constitution was passed, and there were Jews sitting in the Polish parliament, and very influential, and women got the right to vote as well, but also as a period of conflagration and anti-Jewish violence. And that is that almost immediately with the declaration of statehood, anti-Jewish violence broke out. I document in the book how on the day that Poland declared independence, November 11th, 1918, right, that's the day that the guns of Europe fell silent and World War I ended. On that very day in Kielce, a pogrom broke out. That was the first one, and 4 Jews fell in that. And so just contemplating that actual event is I think critical, because it was not involved, because Kielce is actually right here, if you can see. Kielce is not near a border area. It's not near a contested land between Poland and Lithuania or Ukraine. In fact, when I looked into that, and Dr. Jindal knows this more intimately than I do. In fact, the accusation in Kielce was that Jews were pro-Bolshevik. They were called Judeo-communists, something like that, without any kind of proof, and it just led to kind of mob violence against the Jews who were essentially gathering in a community hall to discuss Jewish life looking forward as Poland is independent. But so these pogroms, and some of them, maybe we should be cautious about the word pogrom. Does the word pogrom imply that there are deaths and not just casualties? In that case, we'd have to really qualify when we use that word. But what we do know is that between November 11th, 1918 and November 30th, 1918, pogroms started breaking out around Poland, especially in this area around here. And because of that, there were meetings with Jewish leaders. So I wanted just to pause for 1 second and say that what Pilsudski did as leader of Poland is that he formed a provisional government 7 days after the independence of Poland. The Western democracies only recognized the Polish National Committee in Paris, and it wasn't for 3 months later that actually Pilsudski was able to form a coalition government with Jan Paderewski, Ignacy Jan Paderewski, and finally a Polish government is formed. And you'll see here the head of state and prime minister are on their way to the opening of the first freely elected Polish parliament, since the 18th century, a very dramatic event. But going back to what I wanted to say, let's continue on. And I believe I have 5 minutes. So now I want to talk about the dual legacy, the black spots in Pilsudski's relations with the Jews. There's almost no materials I can find, Jewish materials during World War I, speaking about Pilsudski in a negative way, but that's not the case in the immediate post-war period. So one of the things that I document is that at the end of November 1918, I mentioned to you pogroms had broken out. So Pilsudski did agree to meet with leaders of the Polish Jewish community on the 28th of November 1918. Dr. Jindal, in her book here, does have that full document of the exchange and the minutes of that meeting. And one of the things that I was struck by is that Pilsudski was asked to issue a statement condemning the pogroms. And in response, he made this peculiar argument in this meeting. He said, and I'm quoting, "I am not an autocrat, and I cannot issue proclamations of a political nature other than requests by the government." He says, and then he went on to say, "Because I was not elected president, but appointed president by the previous powers, I'm not really authorized because I wasn't elected. And therefore, for me to make a statement about the pogroms, I have to wait till the parliament is actually in session and freely elected in February 1919. And so the leaders of that responded that they felt that that was a stinging betrayal of the Jews. They're like, we cannot wait for 3 months for a statement to be made. The pogroms are happening right now. What he said is in private, he's going to do everything he can to prevent those by issuing directives to every province and every part of the armed forces saying that this is illegal and people will be held liable for this, but he wouldn't publicly. I've never quite understood that, to be honest. And the other thing we can say is that in February 1919, when the freely elected parliament does convene, they do vote on head of state, and they vote to reinstate Pilsudski as head of state. And to my knowledge, he never did make any proclamation or declaration about the pogroms. Now, there about the pogroms, I wanted to just say here there was just to say here that there was it was noted enough internationally that the American government under Wilson actually formed a commission called the Morgenthau Commission to actually investigate the origins of the pogroms. And there was actually an American commission that went to Warsaw, did an investigation, and issued in October 1919 their famous report on the pogroms, and came away with a number of something like 255 Jews that had been killed in those pogroms, and encourage, of course, Pilsudski to do whatever he could. Now, so that's part of what we call the darker legacy of Pilsudski. And then, as I only have 3 more minutes, it just say here the dual legacy is Pilsudski as benevolent friend of the Jews. And here's an example that as Poland was moving towards a war with Bolshevik Russia under Pilsudski's command, this would have been in July, August 1920, when the Red Army was moving very quickly towards Poland. He stopped to meet Jewish communities, and this is this famous photograph from August 10th, 1920, in which, as you can see here, he signs this, and it becomes kind of like a postcard for him, or something to be proud of and given out, that he's considered as this kind of friend of the Jews, a benevolent figure. Now,
Josh, if you
yes.
need a few minutes, go ahead.
Okay, I'll just do 3 more minutes. And then what happens is he does engage 6 days later in a full-scale war with Bolshevik Russia. But 6 days later, his minister of war did order that Jews in the Polish army in a certain area be removed from the front lines and placed in an internment camp called Jabłonina. And this is a famous photograph of that, which is actually in the Polish Museum of the History of Polish Jews in Warsaw, and it's in many books, and it's this kind of symbol of shame, like that the Polish government decided to intern. Now, this story ends in 24 days, which is that the Poles defeat the Red Army, and then they close the camp, release them, and then all charges are removed from them, and they're reintegrated, I believe, into the armed forces. But the legacy remains, the fact that at the moment of an existential threat to Poland, when the Red Army was literally at the gates of the outskirts of Warsaw, the reaction of the Polish government is to suspect that Polish Jews would side with the enemy. And I think that was a very, very painful thing. And so I'll have to pause there. The rest of my what I wanted to say is that when the border wars end and the borders are settled and there's peace agreements between Poland and its neighbors, that's between 1921, we can say that there is no overt anti-Jewish violence during that time of what I call Pilsudski's Poland, and the resumption of anti-Jewish violence only takes place in the immediate aftermath of his death in May 1935, and that's something to contemplate. Why, when he was leader, there was no anti-Jewish violence, and yet afterwards, almost immediately, pogroms break out. And in fact, that is Dr. Zindel's specialty, because that was her first book on anti-Jewish violence in Poland, 1935 to 1937, right after Pilsudski's death. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Josh, I'm sorry that that you had to rush the last part of your presentation. I'm very appreciative to welcome Professor Jundel for a response, and I suspect that she has perspectives and knowledge about things that maybe you didn't get to.
Sure.
We're very pleased that you're with us, and if I may be impertinent, I'm looking forward to the translation into English of especially her 2011 book, uh, 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 The Blood Libel. It's a very important book, not on this subject, but nevertheless, Dr. Jundel, please take the floor.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful introduction. Joshua described in 20 minutes 40 years of Polish history. So I can respond to some points just now. Maybe I start with the childhood of Pilsudski, because when I started to think about his attitude towards Jews, I thought, what was the attitude of his family? What was said, between children and parents and grandparents in the family. And I found a wonderful, amazing source, which are diaries of his older brother, Bronisław Pilsudski. It is not translated into English, and I think that maybe this is the book which should be translated, because Bronisław Pilsudski made every day, or very often, some description of their life in Vilna when they attended the gymnasium, the Russian gymnasium. So it was written between 1883 and 1885. So we have these two boys. Between them, there was only 1 year difference in age. Bronisław was a little bit older than, and they attended together to the same class in the gymnasium. And we see this family in their everyday life. So there are not, we don't have their statements about what we think about Jews, but there are description of some small facts from their life. And this is like 400,000 pages diary. So there are a lot of small notices about Jews. And as Joshua said, it was a noble family with a great land estates, and their father, whose name was also Jozef Pilsudski, Jozef Wincenty Pilsudski, he had a lot of common with some Jews from Vilna and from the area of their estate, land estate in Zów. And we know that he had a lot of small businesses with Jews. So it was a kind of traditional relationship between Jews in the villages, in the province, and the landowner. And he made these businesses, and he thought it is it is really it was really natural that they did this small businesses. But in some point, he had a very big financial problems, and he borrowed or lent, how to say?
I borrowed, yes.
He borrowed a lot of money from Jews. And then this people who lent him money, they came and wanted to have them back. So there were small quarrels at home already in Vilna, and but at some point at the beginning of this period, Bronisław said that their father has how to say that he likes Jews. So fought their children, his children, Bronisław and for sure also Jozef, I'm sure that it was. But at the same time, they attended gymnasium in a Russian gymnasium, and there were Jews there in the class, and there was a big separation between these two parts of the class. So there were Jews, Russians, and Poles. And Jews, Vilna Jews, they were assimilated to the Russian culture, and they were treated like the part of this Russian society, and they thought that it was a kind of betrayal of Polish cause in Vilna, in this region. So already from in their childhood, there was this ambivalence, of the attitude towards Jews. But I think it's very important to remember this love of their father towards Jews. So there were no anti-Jewish comments at home, I think, because it was written in 1983. It was not, how to say, it was very private document, and we can believe what they written there. And then, and probably Joshua knows this better even than me, it was this controversy over attitude of Bund towards Polish independence and towards the Polish Socialist Party, and Pilsudski tried to win this part of Jewish society for the Polish case, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen, and it was that I think that these two things played role here. So there is a Russification of Jews in Vilna region, and also the lack of cooperation with Bund. And going further to the period of Polish independent state at the beginning, I also noticed that Pilsudski thought a lot and spoke a lot about Jews as communists. We have this sources when Pilsudski wrote to the Polish Prime Minister, probably Skulski, as I remember, during the Kyiv campaign, when he wrote the most of communists are Jews. Those who in this borderline area. So when these pogroms in the eastern area happened, he didn't want to intervene in fact. But we have also this account of Hugh Gibson, American envoy, ambassador in Poland from May or June 1919, and we have this account from Gibson, from this American ambassador, when he said Pilsudski was shocked by this event in Częstochowa in May, and he said that he should order, in order to prevent anti-Jewish violence in army. And I think that it was a difference between the attitude toward Jews in Poland, in the ethnic territory of Poland, and between those Jews who lived on these borderline areas, like Vilna region, Belarus, and where these pogroms in 1919 happened, like Vilna, Lida, even Minsk, Spinsk, and that it was this difference very important. But I think also that after Morgenthau commission, Piłsudski also changed a little bit his attitude, and in fact, this pogrom stopped after the pogrom in Minsk in August 1919. So I didn't find any order of Piłsudski about anti-Jewish violence, but I think that there was something in the army that was taught. There should be some talks about this, and maybe I have not many time, but last my remark would be about Jabłonna camp, concentration camp or internment camp. We really, or I think also Joshua, we are waiting for a book about this event, about this fact, because we don't know exactly what happened there, how many people were detained there, 3,000, yeah, or 17,000. And this, it was like a couple of years ago, I don't know if you know this book, Leszek Kania wrote a book about desertees from the Polish army, about also crimes committed by the army. And he's a military historian, so and we are not military historians, so this is a kind of different attitude, and a kind of and we work also on different sources, because they work only on the sources of army, which are this is a very big collection, and it is, how to say, very hard to work there by the by us non-military person to find appropriate sources there in this huge amount of orders and so on. And he found the source, the beginning of this Jabłonna story. It was a kind of fear that which was present among high officers of the army, that Jews are somehow disloyal to the Polish army, and it was connected with one fact. It was during the Kyiv campaign in the end of June 1920, when the First Polish Reserve Division withdrew from the front, and a big part of these units from this division were created by Jewish conscript soldiers. They were not prepared to fight. They were normal persons, not prepared, and probably not very. They really want to fight in this war, and then when they started to flee from this front line, the officers were very disappointed, and it was a very big catastrophe because of this event. It was the beginning of this how to say, when the Polish army started to withdraw from this area.
Right.
So yeah, maybe I will not. I stop at this moment. Yeah, maybe we can talk about some things later.
I think maybe Josh would like an opportunity, and maybe it would be good for the two of you to be able to dialogue about some of the issues. This issue of the Blona event and the Kiev events that you mentioned were not covered in Josh's talk, but I recommend that people read the book, and I think it's chapter 13 that some of this is dealt with in chapter 14. But Josh, maybe you have a response, and then let's invite the two of you to dialogue, and we have some questions that we're receiving.
Okay, great. So first of all, I was very inspired, Yolanta, by your remarks, and learned a lot. I forgot to mention to the listeners that she is the publisher of Bronisław Pilsudski's diaries, and those diaries, the original, I believe, are housed at the Jozef Pilsudski Institute in America, because that's where I found them. I don't know if those are the originals, but I used those for my book, but that was more to paint a character portrait of Pilsudski, about what his older brother thought of him when Pilsudski was 15, 14, and his brother was commenting daily about his younger brother's personality. So I thought, but I didn't use it enough to come across this aspect. So the fact that their father actually had cordial relations with Jews, and so likely that there were no prejudicial comments in the home, I think is important. And there's also one element that's loosely connected, where I found a document showing that there was a moment where Pilsudski, who had 9 siblings, they had a domestic staff, and Pilsudski's mother overheard one of the children making a certain remark to one of the domestic staff, and it was documented that she was just outraged by that and had a whole discussion with him about what does it mean to properly treat other people, and you never show disrespect to anyone based on social class, religion, and that it's just strictly forbidden in the home. You have to treat everybody with respect. So I thought this was also this thing that about the way that the children were raised, but maybe that's connected to the Jews, that there likely were no, and maybe because of the father that did. I think that's a really important insight. So I'm going to go back. I happen to have a copy of your amazing 400-page book on now. In terms of going a little bit forward to the Jewish Labor Bund, I think that's really important. I wrote an article just on Jozef Pilsudski's attitude to the Jewish question between 1893 and 1905. And that's when he was in this public debate with the Bund on the future of the Polish lands. And I think that's so critical to isolate this, that the Jews of Vilna were Russified. So the Jews of Vilna at the Vilna Russian state gymnasium were often Russified, and that this did create resentment on the part of the Poles, and I think Pilsudski's debate on that you are on Polish land, so you actually have to support the demands of the local population for the future of Poland, I think was quite important. And we also have an unusual case in which, if you remember, that the Bund were assimilated and came from homes that were Russian. The leaders came from homes that were Russian speaking, and so Pilsudski puts out articles in which he's condemning the Bund for their lack of materials in Yiddish. And saying you should switch totally to Yiddish. So you have this Polish leader saying, "What are you doing writing to Jewish potential recruits in Russian and speaking in Russian and having these Russian language circles? You should transition to Yiddish." And I thought that was important, that he wasn't saying we want to Polonize the Jews. So that was important. Now going to Jabłona, and I just want to say that was critical what you said there, and this, just getting to this nuance of how Pilsudski saw those regions, because he did make statements, and he's saying in this area, really in Polish areas, Jewish soldiers are loyal. Here they were loyal. Here they are loyal. But then when he goes to those areas of the East, he's saying, well, we have cases where they did lay down their arms, or they did flee the scene, or they did change sides, or sympathize with the Bolsheviks. So I think that is something to think about. The Kiev part, I really want to. That could be the critical background to the Jabłona affair, in which they interned Jewish soldiers. And I do think you're right about a book, because when I started researching that, they said 17,000 Jewish soldiers were interned. And then I came across another source that said, no, 1,000 were interned. But for me, what was important is that the Polin Museum of the History of Polish Jews in Warsaw, they do have this photograph of the soldiers at Jabłona, and it still says Jabłona, where 17,000 Jews were interned. But now we seem to know that it was less than 3,000 and possibly 1,500. But it's interesting that number of 17,000 still continues. But the basis for it, the withdrawal from Kiev, where Polish soldiers had taken Kiev in May 1920, and then now they were in full withdrawal. This idea that maybe poorly trained Jewish volunteers for the Polish army had, as you're saying, that this is new to me, that maybe they were inexperienced and then they fled, and that there was a lot of resentment towards the way they behaved. I have to read more into that, but that could be the background.
Well, we need more research on this subject. Leszek Kania, which I mentioned already, he wrote that the first order after this defeat near Ostrog was that in the military unit there should be no more than 10% of Jews, of Jewish conscripts. And then after this, the Russians stand near Warsaw, it was this order to withdraw Jews from front unit. We know that it was not done, because we know that some Jews died during this period, that we have those who were killed in this August battles. So even 17,000 is not, they don't comprise the whole number of Jews which were in the army. So it was only one part, because it was impossible to withdraw all Jews from the front. But
I also just to say that what I do show in my book is from the day August 16th, when the order came, the Jewish parliamentarians immediately sent to the Minister of War a very stark rebuke, demanding that the order be reversed, and they kept it.
And Apollinaire Hardglass went there a couple of times. He was a Zionist who was a member of Polish Parliament, Apollinaire Hardglass, and he wrote there about this, and there were discussion in Polish Parliament then. We know this reactions, but my last sentence in this case, in the issue of the Jabłonna camp, I've read a book of Andrea Fitzer, who about concentration camps during the First World War, and I've read that 800,000 people during the First World War were detained in concentration camps in Europe. That it was the first time when this concentration camps or internment camps or detention camps were used in the politics, in the domestic politics of many countries, of many countries. So I know that it was a kind of common idea during that time to do this. It was very easy to introduce this order. It was in England, in many countries. So in Russia, in Germany, even Polish legionnaires, Pilsudski legionnaires, were detained in such internment camps. So I think that it was a kind of sign of the time also, this Jabłonna camp.
Jabłonna. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, as a
well, I want to interrupt between the two of you, just to give the opportunity for you both to respond to questions, comments. You can see some of the questions in the chat, and I'm not sure if there are questions in other parts of the.
We only have questions in chat. So if there are questions, they are visible in chat.
Okay. Do we have? I'm going to start with a friend of mine, Barbara Rilko, who is a very important scholar in and of her own right, has written about her mother's experience during World War II as a physician, Rilke Bauer, personal friend of mine. So she writes about her Catholic father, who joined the Polish legions of Pilsudski in 1915, and was a career military officer, and was captured in 1939. So she's sharing with us her personal experience. We are hoping that she will give a presentation about her mother's treatment as a physician, Catholic physician, sometime this year in December. So we look forward to hearing from her. That's not quite a question. Question from Rabbi Jacques Zuckerkorn, who wanted to know more about the involvement of Jews in the SEM. And you've begun to refer to that in the last part of the conversation. I'm wondering if one of you would like to think. Yeah.
Can I start by just saying one or two things about that? Although Yolanta, this is forms part of her scholarship, maybe both of us, is that one of the extraordinary outcomes of the independence of Poland in 1918, and then the first parliamentary elections in January 1918, and then the convening of the first freely elected Polish parliament in 127 years, in February 1919, is it brought into the chamber 12 Jewish members of parliament. Now, when I say that, I want to qualify that. The Jewish members that I'm referring to were actual members of Jewish political parties who were elected on Jewish votes. Jewish votes for those parties. There were other members of the party who were Poles of Jewish background or Polish Jews who were members of general parties like Felix Perl. Doesn't really sound like a Polish name in particular, right? But he represented he was in the parliament as a member of the Polish Socialist Party, and there were others like that as well. So I don't know the count beyond those members of Jewish political parties, because there's famous photographs of them, but they represented the Zionists, they represented the Orthodox Agudat Yisrael party, and they formed part of something called the Jewish Parliamentary Club. And that club met independently, and they would issue advisory reports. They would issue appeals to the prime minister if they felt something strong, but they did actually kind of like unify in that sense, and they were important through the interwar period for sure. Yolanta, did you want to say something?
I would say that probably 1/3 of Jewish parliament members were Orthodox. Majority of them were Zionists, and it was a kind of unwritten agreement that Jews on the political Polish arena were represented more by Zionists, and this Orthodox power was somehow better to see on the Jewish community level. So in the Kehilas, mostly Orthodox were in the boards of Kehilas, but in the election to the parliament, Jews voted eagerly for Zionists, for this secular parties. Mm-hmm. Although Orthodox thought, we have the right to decide about Jewish stuff. And it was not only religious stuff. It was about economics, about Jewish rights, and they were in parliament and they were very active, some of them.
Would you say that they were very close to Pilsudski, especially the Orthodox members of the parliament?
No, I would
they didn't have a
claim
close relation. No.
Some of them they tried, but this alliance with Pilsudski created mostly the rabbis from Galicia, which were not in the parliament, because the majority of Orthodox in the Polish parliament were from former Russian territory. And then in 26 and 28, in the election, parliament election, they backed Pilsudski. They not voted for the Jewish lists. They voted for Pilsudski directly, Orthodox from Galicia.
I see.
I just want to bring in one other question from Professor Cater, who's asking about Pilsudski's Catholic background, his religious commitments, and how that may have influenced him. And I think this very interesting connection between being Catholic and being a national figure and being a socialist is an interesting combination for American audiences.
Yolanta, would you like to? I have some things to say, but maybe you would like to start on that.
Okay, maybe just now I start. The family of Pilsudski was not very religious. They from these diaries of Bronisław Pilsudski, we know that they attended masses in Vilna, but very often not. So they went to church, but didn't come in to the church. So they just met their friends outside the church. So it was not very religious home, and the parents didn't check the children if they attended or not. And Pilsudski said after years that he hated clergy, Catholic clergy, because they didn't give their mother rozgrzeszenie, I don't know how to say in English, absolution before her death, because she was accused by clergy that she didn't check and that she allowed their children, so Bronisław and Jozef, to be atheists. So Pilsudski, he didn't attend it. He didn't observe Catholic customs. I don't know how to say, rules, and he even resigned from the Catholic religion before his marriage, because his first wife was divorcee, and they married in the Protestant church.
Protestant, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to mention that he converted to Protestantism in 1899 because he wanted to marry his significant other who was a divorcee with a 5-year-old daughter, and the church wouldn't allow them to get married. So they both converted and got married in a Presbyterian church. And, I tried to trace back when and did he ever convert back? And one source said that to me that he converted back around 1916, maybe. But I know that the opponents of Pilsudski, I was struck by this in the 1970s and 1980s when there where these were anti they were very right-wing followers of Roman Dmowski, and their publication was even published by the Roman Dmowski Society. But in one biography, it said Pilsudski was neither Polish nor Catholic. He was Lithuanian and Protestant, and therefore he never was and never will be regarded as an authentic leader of Poland. So that was their statement about Pilsudski.
We know also that there were some anti-Pilsudski voices from the hierarchy of Catholic Church, and some bishops that didn't want to bury Pilsudski in Wawel. So there were some protests against this. I think that maybe 1916 is possible that he came back to Catholicism then, because I thought somehow a certificate of the a certificate of baptism of a Jewish soldier, and Pilsudski was this godfather of this soldier from 1916. So maybe
right.
Maybe he did something around this date.
I also want to just remind listeners this interesting fact, which is that he became estranged from his wife even before around 1908, and she wouldn't give him a divorce, so he's technically married. She lived in Krakow, he lived in Warsaw, but in the meantime, he had a significant other, and at age 50, she gave birth to their first daughter. And so when he became head of state and commander-in-chief in November 1918, his wife lived in another city. He was living with his significant other, and they had a child out of wedlock in Warsaw. And they couldn't actually live together, and they had to keep it private until his wife passed away in 1921, and then the mother of his child, by that time 2 children, could move into the Belvedere Palace. But I was,
and probably they married in Catholic Church. But
okay.
I want to interrupt we're coming to the conclusion of our time. I want to call people's attention to the interesting note about Bronislaw Pilsudski. I think that's who's being referred to here, one of Jozef Pilsudski's brother, who was an anthropologist and ethnologist. And interesting note about descendants living in Japan. And you may remember Pilsudski's trip to Japan in 1904. I also want to call to attention the discussion by Anne Applebaum regarding the use of the gulag and concentration camps that she brings to the fore. Very important rejoinder and connection to Professor Schundel's remark about the use during World War I. We are so blessed today to have such great scholars, and we could indeed continue for a good deal of time with many more questions. I'm looking forward to having both of you return. I think people should know that there is areas of Professor Zimmerman's work regarding the home army in World War II, of Professor Schundel's work, which we've begun to refer to, that we hope will have future opportunities for discussion. And I want to just bring to people's attention the events that are coming up. in our Freighted Legacy series, and I'm putting here in reverse order. March 22nd, we're going to be blessed with the enormous work that has been done by Mark L. Smith, translations from Yiddish of historians who wrote in Yiddish. We mentioned one of them today, Shotsky, who is pictured here on the cover. I believe it's Shotsky that is here on the right, but I could be wrong. Below is Ringelblum. Over here is Dubnov, Auerbach, and I hope that people will join us on March 22nd. Before that, on March 8th, we are going to have a presentation on the American presentation of the play Our Class. We're going to be speaking with the director. Those of us living in San Francisco will be privileged to see the play later on in March. And it's a very significant dramatic event, and we look forward to talking with the director on March 8th. I think it's fine for people to fly into San Francisco and see the play itself sometime between March 27th and April 7th. Lots of information about that on our website at this moment. So we are very appreciative of our scholars today. We've learned a good deal. We've been able to share about these important works that they have done, and we have a number of things that are coming up with a full program. I turn to you, the listeners who are still with us, to remind you that this is work that needs to be supported. I'm sharing with you just a few of the previous programs of Freighted Legacy as we scroll through different moments in our discussions. And I want to specifically, this is the first talk that Josh gave for us. And I want to also mention that we've had the work of Dr. Sam Kossoff. Dr. James Diamond has just published the book upon which this lecture is mentioned. And here you see also some of the members of our conversation who have participated in various efforts to help us understand not only the history but the culture, from bagels to the very serious issues that Professor Grabowski has mentioned, and other scholars, the English translation of Joanna Torskova-Kier's first book, and of course Glenn Diner, and we are in the process of translating a book that Dominika Zakraszewska and her spouse Artur are helping to produce in Polish, of an introduction to 30 important moments in Jewish history. This, of course, is a important way of saying that all this work demands that people support and care about this, and we will appreciate your going to the website and sharing generously as we are making a transition. We've recently appointed a new CEO. I'm now kicked upstairs or kicked downstairs as president, and we have enjoyed this new transition. And I want to just thank our panelists today, Dr. Joshua Zimmerman, Dr. Yolanta Jundel, and I'm sure there will be other questions, and we will pass them along. Our thanks for the technical support of Marjana, Marek Yazowski, Dominika Zakraszewska, and we wish you all a good day, and thank you once again to our panelists. All the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, here, by the way, just because it's the next one is one of the leaders of the delegation to the SEM. This was a talk about Yoshua Ton, a progressive rabbi. We would call him somewhere between a conservative rabbi and a reform rabbi in American terms, and a very important talk that is available on our website. Good day, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Shalom.